There are moments in life when silence feels like the only weapon left, when the world grows too loud, when words fall on deaf ears, when every response only makes things worse. We choose silence, but there is something we must understand. Silence is not the final strategy. It is only the beginning. Today, we explore a deeper strategy, a way of being that commands attention without uttering a word, a way of living that makes you magnetic, unshakable, and beyond manipulation, without needing to prove anything. This is not just a philosophy. It is a way of life, a path through destructive emotions and back to inner power. 1. Silence, only the beginning of wisdom. Have you ever found yourself caught in an argument, unsure whether to speak or stay silent? Have you ever chosen silence simply because words could change nothing? In today's noisy world, where everyone competes to speak louder, silence feels foreign, and yet it holds great power. We often mistake silence for weakness, that if we don't respond, don't speak up, it means we're conceding or even accepting disrespect. But in truth, timely silence is the clearest mark of self-mastery. It is not passive. It is the active choice to not let emotion dictate behavior. In Stoic philosophy, silence is a tool for observation, a moment to disconnect from the outer world and reconnect with the inner. It's like taking a deep breath before answering a crucial question, not because we don't know what to say, but because we choose what is worthy of being said. When we are insulted, misunderstood, or provoked, the instinct is to react, usually with emotion. But if in that very moment we remain silent, we gain the first advantage, control over our emotions. No one can touch our inner world unless we let them in. Silence gives us the space to observe, and observation is the first step toward understanding. When we're not rushing to respond, we begin to see the essence of things more clearly, identify what truly matters, and discard the unnecessary noise. Silence allows the mind to settle rather than spiral. Think of a familiar situation. Someone attacks you with harsh, false words. Instinct urges you to strike back. I need to show I won't be pushed around. I must defend my honor. But have you noticed? These reactions rarely lead to anything better. They escalate conflict, exhaust us, and often leave us regretting the words we unleashed in a moment of chaos. Instead, try choosing silence. Look at them with calm, without judgment. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this really worth losing my peace over? This simple question can act as a switch, interrupting a negative chain of reaction. Because we are not here to react, we are here to choose, and our first choice must be peace. The silence of someone who knows their worth carries weight. It needs no explanation, no justification. It forces others to step back and question their own behavior. In a world obsessed with speaking louder, faster, more, silence becomes a quiet kind of brilliance. But be careful. Silence should not become a shell to hide fear or shirk responsibility. That is the shadow of silence, when it's misused as a retreat from life rather than a foundation for moving forward. We cannot remain silent forever. Silence is a beginning from which we act with clarity, awareness, and purpose. Without that, silence becomes distance. It makes others stop understanding us, and eventually, we lose connection with ourselves. So the key is this: know when to be silent and when to speak. The Stoic never uses silence as an excuse for passivity. They train in silence the way a warrior sharpens a blade, so that when the moment comes, their words are sharp, precise, and necessary. A real-world example. Great leaders often remain silent in meetings. They don't rush to speak to assert power. They listen. Watch every reaction, every angle, then they speak. And when they do, the room listens, not because they are loud, but because they've proven, I speak only when it matters. The rest of the time I observe. That silence doesn't diminish them. On the contrary, it deepens their presence, their trust, their influence. So should we. In daily life, from work, relationships to social media, train in the art of silence, not to withdraw, but to protect what matters. Your energy, your calm, your self-control. Let silence be a space of strength, not a pit of avoidance. Choose silence not out of fear of speaking, but because you know words only hold weight when paired with awareness and clarity. And most of all, let that silence be the foundation for rising to the next level of self-mastery. Because in the end, silence is the beginning of wisdom, but true wisdom lies in knowing when to stay silent and when to act. 2. Intentional presence. No need to speak much, yet others will listen. There are people who draw the attention of a room without saying a word. They enter calmly, without rush, without noise, yet somehow we know they're there. It's not because they speak louder or seek the spotlight, but because they carry a palpable inner force. It's not showmanship, it's energy, and that energy comes from within, from a steady mind, from self-mastery forged over time. We live in an age where everyone wants to be seen, to be heard, to be noticed. Social media turns presence into a never-ending competition. But here's the irony. The more desperately we try to be noticed, the easier we are to forget. The Stoic doesn't seek recognition by speaking more. They don't interrupt. They show up with intention. And that's why they cannot be ignored. Presence is not merely being there. It's a state of knowing exactly who you are, what you're doing, and why you are here. It's not a surface-level act, but a choice made from within. When we show up with awareness, every gesture, every glance, every breath carries a single consistent message. I don't need to say much. My silence speaks loudly enough. Intentional presence demands a steady inner life. It doesn't come from polished social skills, but from knowing oneself. The more a person understands their core values, the less they need to prove them with words. They don't try to impress, because they know true worth is not in introductions, but in how one lives. We can begin to cultivate presence through small things. When entering a space, a meeting, a cafe, or a gathering, instead of rushing in or trying to stand out, take a few seconds to breathe. Stand tall, hold steady eye contact, and simply be there fully. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Hear the sounds around you. Notice your breath. Say nothing, just be fully present, and you'll notice the way others look at you begins to shift. We don't need to be the smartest or the wealthiest in the room, but if we are the most grounded, in mind, in emotion, in attitude, our presence will always be felt. No shouting needed, no theatrics required. Quiet strength carries its own gravity. It makes others self-adjust in your presence. It deepens conversations, because people know if you speak, it's worth listening to. The world is not lacking in great talkers, but what the world deeply needs are those who can create spaces of stillness, where others feel heard, feel safe to be themselves, feel free to slow down in a life that moves too fast. When we show up with intention, we don't just radiate strength. We inspire others to live deeper, clearer, more authentically. We often believe that to have influence, we must speak more, engage more, stand out more. But sometimes influence comes from calm, from quiet presence that isn't flashy or loud. The Stoic doesn't fight for the mic. They step back and observe. They wait for the right moment. And when they do speak, no one interrupts, because everyone knows this person has listened long enough to understand, deep enough to share, and clearly enough to speak only what matters. That isn't easy, because to be truly present we must face many fears. The fear of being overlooked, of not being validated, of missing the moment. But if we have the courage to stay silent, the strength to not seek fleeting attention, the light we carry will never burn out. It's the light of clarity, the light of a soul that doesn't crave attention, but always earns respect. And finally, intentional presence is not about making others notice us. It's about not losing ourselves in the noise of countless performance. When we live with clear awareness, we don't need to pretend. We don't need to strain. We are who we are. And that alone is enough to make the world listen. 3. Purposeful action. When words no longer carry weight. There are times in life when words lose their value, not because we said the wrong thing, but because others have stopped listening. And not because they don't care, but because in a world drowning in words, only action creates true resonance. We've become accustomed to explaining, defending, justifying. Whenever we're misunderstood, we instinctively react with words, trying to fix our image, to shield ourselves from pain through logic. But the truth is, the more we speak in emotional moments, the less our words weigh, because in those times, we're not speaking to express value. We're speaking to react. And reaction, as the Stoics often remind us, is instinct, not awareness. The Stoic doesn't use words to impress. They choose action. And they act with intention. They understand that spoken expression is only surface level. What truly touches others and ourselves is behavior, choices, the way we face situations without preaching. Purposeful action isn't loud. It isn't a performance. Quite the opposite. It's often simple, yet profound. A coworker talks behind your back. You don't need to confront them. Just keep doing your job well. Stay principled. Stay true to your values. No need to strike back. No need to explain. Just stay consistent. And let time speak what you don't have to. A friend breaks a promise, hurts you, you can speak your feelings. But afterward, what matters isn't the argument, but your response. Maybe it's forgiveness. Maybe it's setting new boundaries. Maybe it is letting go. But whatever it is, it must come from one clear purpose. You act for peace, for growth, not to soothe a bruised ego. The Stoics believe our strength lies in choosing the right action. Even when our emotions scream for the opposite, they don't get pulled into the storm. They shape the storm by how they live. We see this clearly in people of true influence. An athlete doesn't announce they'll win. They just train, stay disciplined, and show up ready. A leader doesn't constantly talk about vision. They listen, decide with clarity, and let their actions prove belief. The clearer the purpose, the less need for performance. Because when you know what you're doing and why, you don't need others to understand immediately. You only need to understand yourself. And that is the firmest foundation to keep walking without wavering. Intentional action is a commitment to the self. It's how we remind ourselves, I don't live by impulse, I live by principle. That doesn't mean rigidity. It means direction. We don't act because it feels right in the moment, but because it's right for the person we aim to become. Of course, we won't always know the right action. Life is complex. Emotions are real. There will be moments we act poorly or hesitate into inaction. But in those moments, if we can pause and ask, does this serve my core values? That's when we're truly living the Stoic philosophy of action. Remember, purposeful action doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. The Stoic doesn't seek admiration. They seek alignment. And the greatest reward of alignment is self-respect. No one needs to affirm it for us. Because if we are clear within, no amount of noise outside can throw us off course. We live in a world where action is easily replaced by image. A photo online can make others think we're thriving. A powerful quote can make them believe we've healed. But the Stoic doesn't live to appear okay. They live to be okay. And that comes only from consistent, quiet, purposeful acts, not from display. So when words no longer work, when others no longer listen, when emotions distort everything, that's the time to act, not to retaliate, but to rebuild, not to attract attention, but to create value. We can't change everything around us overnight, but we can change how we choose to act today. And when each action is grounded, intentional, and self-directed, then every day becomes a clear reflection of who we're becoming. And by then, we won't need to say much at all, because the way we live will say everything. 4. Controlled visibility, showing up at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. We live in a world where everyone craves attention. The more we show up, the more we post, the more we speak, the more we believe we are becoming valuable. But the truth is, when something appears too frequently, it loses its weight. A person who is present in every conversation, every meeting, every status update, gradually fades from others' minds, because people don't just respond to presence. They respond to the value that presence brings, and the Stoics understood this well. They didn't live to be noticed. They lived to make real impact, not through constant visibility, but through showing up at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. Controlled visibility is the art of one who knows how to manage their energy. They are not absent out of fear, nor present out of obligation. They show up because their presence carries value. It is a deliberate choice, not a random act. The Stoic knows that power doesn't lie in how often we appear, but in when we choose to appear and why. Controlled presence requires inner clarity. We must know what we stand for, which principles guide us, and what is truly worth our presence. It's like this: not everyone should step on the stage, but when we genuinely have something to say, something worth saying, then our appearance becomes a meaningful performance. And timely absence is just as much a part of the art of influence. In real life, we see controlled visibility in those who speak rarely, but command silence when they do. In those who don't flaunt everything on social media, yet whose lives exude depth. In those who aren't always around, but when they are, they bring a sense of clarity, a grounded presence that calms, inspires, or reminds others of something important. Controlled visibility doesn't come from self-promotion, but from inner steadiness. The Stoic doesn't need to show up constantly, because they're not driven by the fear of being forgotten. They know that if every appearance carries real value, that presence will be remembered and respected. Like an artisan who strikes the stone only when needed, and each strike shapes it with precision. Nothing extra, nothing missing. We can begin practicing this in our daily lives by asking one question before we speak, post, or step forward. Does this presence serve a purpose? If the answer is to soothe emotion, to react, to avoid being left behind, pause. But if the answer is, I have something valuable to share, or my presence will bring positive change, or this moment needs me to step up, then step forward and be fully present. Controlled visibility is not about disappearing to draw attention. It is not a psychological tactic. It is a way of living, aware of when to step back, when to step forward, when to observe, and when to act. It's like knowing when to light a lamp and when to let the darkness do its work. And ultimately, the most powerful gift controlled visibility offers is freedom. We are no longer trapped in the urge to be seen everywhere all the time. We no longer worry whether others notice us, because we know every time we choose to show up, it is from awareness, from true value, not from pressure or fear. Living this way, we not only respect our own time and energy, but we also make our presence meaningful to ourselves and to those around us. 5. Contrast, the art of influence without noise. In the modern world, noise is the default. We live in a constant stream of information, messages, images, and emotions. Everyone is trying to speak louder, do more, appear more often, just to avoid fading into the background. But the more noise there is, the more exhausted people become. And in that very landscape, contrast becomes what makes us stand out naturally, without shouting. The art of contrast doesn't lie in being different for the sake of it. It lies in the deliberate act of stepping back to step forward at the right moment, or staying silent long enough for every word to carry weight. The Stoic understands that if we are always present, always speaking, always reacting, our presence, our words, our actions lose their impact. People are not only drawn to strength, they are drawn to the unexpected, to the rhythm between stillness and movement, between presence and absence, between silence and action. Like music needs silence for its notes to stand out. A painting needs negative space to create depth. A speech needs pauses so the audience can absorb its meaning. Life is the same. We don't always need to do something to be seen. Sometimes doing nothing is exactly what makes our next move unforgettable. Imagine this: someone who's in every conversation, who always has an opinion. Eventually, no matter what they say, others stop truly listening. But someone who often steps back, observes, and only speaks when it matters, their words draw attention, not because of a special voice, but because the silence before them gave their words resonance. Contrast is how we bring depth to our personal influence. It requires no gimmicks. It demands subtlety, knowing when to advance and when to retreat. And most of all, it requires confidence that we don't need to always be present to remain influential. We can apply the principle of contrast in many areas of life. At work, instead of constantly offering ideas or speaking in every meeting, choose the moment to contribute. When your incisive face truly opens a new direction, that's when others see you not as someone who talks a lot, but as someone who thinks strategically. In relationships, especially with loved ones, sometimes we need to pause, not stop loving, but stop controlling. Stop repeating what's wrong, and allow space for the other person to recognize and to change. Silence, when born from understanding, is more powerful than complaint, because it comes from conscious love, not fleeting emotion. Even in how we share on social media, rather than posting every day, we can choose intentional gaps, and when we return, we share something with depth, something real. That return, after silence, is felt more deeply, more honestly, and it makes people want to listen. But to truly master the art of contrast, we must learn one deeper truth: the calm of no longer needing to prove anything. Only when we are no longer afraid of being forgotten, no longer driven by the need to be constantly seen, can we be still enough to step forward at the right moment and leave a lasting impression. The Stoic doesn't worry about what others think of their absence. They aren't concerned whether their silence is misunderstood. They care only about one thing: does my next appearance serve something greater? They live with the deep conviction that true value doesn't need to be spoken daily. It needs to be nurtured daily. Contrast is also a reminder to honor our own presence. If we throw ourselves into life at full intensity every day, at some point, even we will lose interest in our own journey. But if we know when to pause, when to rest, when to observe, then each moment of action becomes more vivid. Each thing we do carries a piece of mindfulness, not just reaction. And when we live that way, with a rhythm of forward and back, of speech and silence, of presence and disappearance, then the less becomes what gives us greater depth. No need to polish our image. No need to shout for attention. Just know when to show up and when to let absence speak. This is not a fleeting tactic. It is a way of living, an inner rhythm the Stoics have pursued for thousands of years, not to be swept away by a noisy world, but to leave a deep, quiet, undeniable influence behind. 6. Self-mastery, the root of inner strength. Self-mastery is not about gritting your teeth through suffering. It is not about suppressing anger, bottling emotions, or pretending to be strong. Self-mastery is a deep understanding of oneself to the point where we are no longer pulled by external events, but instead respond from a place of inner awareness. The Stoics call this the discipline of perception, the ability to guide our thoughts, emotions, and actions by reason rather than instinct. In reality, we do not control the world. We cannot dictate how others behave, cannot choose the weather, the circumstances, or the events that come our way. But the one thing, and the most important thing, we can always control is how we respond to them. Imagine driving to work in the morning when someone suddenly cuts you off, honks relentlessly, and gestures offensively. Our initial reaction is usually anger, even the urge to retaliate. But if, in that very moment, we pause, take a deep breath, and ask, do I really want to let a stranger decide the mood of my entire day? Then in that second, you are practicing self-mastery. Stoics are not emotionless. They feel everything, but instead of letting emotions dictate behavior, they learn to sit with those emotions, understand them, and choose to respond with a reason. It's not easy, especially under pressure, but every time we do it, our inner strength grows a little more. Self-mastery is not emotional isolation. It is the ability to listen to oneself before reacting to others. When we are criticized, instead of reacting defensively, we can ask, is there any truth in this? When we are misunderstood, instead of rushing to explain, we might consider what matters more, the truth or being understood by everyone. Self-mastery lies in the ability to step outside the moment and choose the better response. Self-mastery isn't just for hard times, it's for moments of temptation too. When facing a needless indulgence, a sharp remark we'll regret, a rash decision, those are the moments where the ability to pause, reflect, and choose rightly is the clearest sign of inner strength. No one is there to applaud. No one sees your inner battle, but you do, and you see the person you are slowly becoming. We often think success is built on talent, hard work, or opportunity, but without self-mastery, all of it can unravel. A talented person without restraint is prone to conflict, driven by emotion, risking credibility and honor over a single lapse in judgment. Someone with opportunity but no self-control will abandon discipline and lose themselves in temporary glamour. Self-mastery is the anchor that holds us to the person we want to become. It is the ability to say no to what doesn't serve our long-term goals, even if it looks appealing in the moment, like saying no to a casual night out, to stay home and refine a skill, or choosing silence over conflict to protect inner peace. These small acts, repeated over time, build a character, one that lives with direction, strength, and depth. And the beautiful truth is, self-mastery is not innate, it is trained. Every day, in the smallest choices, every morning we wake up early or hit snooze, every time we silence distractions or scroll aimlessly, every time we choose between reacting or observing. Self-mastery is the habit of acting on what we believe, not what we feel in the moment. A perfect example is found in elite athletes. They are not always motivated, but they are disciplined. And that discipline doesn't come from external pressure, but from internal commitment. They know self-mastery is the only bridge between potential and achievement. If you want to live by your values, build a career, or cultivate a meaningful relationship, self-mastery is non-negotiable. The Stoic lives with the awareness that we cannot control the world, but we can always control ourselves. That's the one thing no one can take from us, and the one thing that defines our true character. When we've mastered ourselves, we need no other tools. We need prove nothing. We become an undeniable influence, not because we are loud, but because we are steady. Self-mastery is also a gift we give to those around us. When we don't react impulsively, we don't spread negative energy. When we regulate emotion, our relationships grow healthier. And when we live with awareness, we become an inspiration to others, not through our words, but through the quiet power of how we live each day. 7. Training inner strength. You can't influence the world until you've mastered yourself. There's a truth we often overlook. No one truly listens to someone who can't even govern themselves. You might speak well, write beautifully, even share daily messages of positivity, but if your actual life is a chain of impulsive reflex actions, emotional volatility, and undisciplined habits, sooner or later, your words will lose their weight. The Stoics understood this deeply. To lead others, you must first lead yourself. They didn't talk endlessly about becoming strong. They devoted their lives to becoming steady, and that doesn't come from theory, but from the daily training of inner strength. Training inner strength isn't as clear-cut as learning a specific skill, but it affects everything you do. It's like the roots of a tree, invisible to the eye. But if the roots are weak, no matter how tall the tree or how lush its leaves, a single strong wind can bring it down. So how do we train inner strength? By starting with the smallest things and repeating them with consistency. Waking up early while still tired, journaling when your mind is chaotic, meditating in the middle of a stressful day, saying no to a tempting but meaningless invite, staying silent when you want to lash out. Every small act is proof that you are mastering yourself. No one builds inner strength in moments of crisis alone. The climactic moments are not the time to begin. We must train when things are still calm, when the outer world is still quiet. Use that time to fortify your inner world, like a warrior sharpening their blade in the shadows, so that when the time comes, they draw it without trembling. One of the most powerful tools for cultivating inner strength is the habit of self-reflection. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius didn't just think, they wrote. Every night, he took time to record his thoughts, his actions, his successes, and his failures, not to criticize himself, but to understand himself better. And from that clarity, he made better decisions the next day. We can do the same. It doesn't have to be eloquent or lengthy. Just a few lines each day answering simple questions. Did I live by my principles today? What caused me to lose control? How will I respond differently next time? Over time, we'll be surprised to find ourselves reacting differently. Not out of effort, but because our inner clarity has grown. Training inner strength also means choosing discomfort. The Stoics didn't avoid challenge. They stepped into it. Not because they enjoyed pain, but because they understood. Only through adversity do we truly see ourselves. Picture someone hiking through mountains. If you always choose the easy path, you'll never see the view from above. But if you climb, even when it's tiring, even when your legs ache, eventually, you'll see what those on flat ground never will. Life is the same. Challenges reveal inner strength and sharpen it most. When we're rejected, when we fail, when we're misunderstood, we face a choice: react emotionally or use the moment to grow inwardly. Training inner strength doesn't change the situation. but it transforms how we face it. Take a familiar example at work. Some days we face unfair criticism, tight deadlines, or uncooperative colleagues. We might feel angry, want to complain, or give up. But if we treat these moments as chances to practice calm, to refine our communication, to develop pressure management, then with each round, we not only get the job done, but also become more resilient for the long run. Training inner strength isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming trustworthy, first and foremost to yourself. When you are trustworthy to yourself, you don't make empty promises. You do what you say. You keep your word, your principles, your voices, even when no one's watching. And when that becomes habit, your presence carries its own credibility. No need to convince anyone. Someone with real inner strength doesn't need to say, "I'm strong." Others will feel it in the way they live, in how they navigate conflict, in the calm in their eyes when storms rise. That cannot be faked. It can only be forged, not in one day, but every day. 8. Shaping a legacy. Live as if you already know what you want to leave behind. We often think of legacy as something distant. Achievements, reputation, the things we're remembered for after we're gone. But if we look deeper, legacy is not a final destination. It's a daily direction. It's not found in grand events, but in the way we live each small moment. The question is not, what will I leave behind? But what am I planting into the world today? The Stoic lives as though they've always known what they want to leave behind. Not because they chase fame, but because they live with deep awareness of the consequences of each action. They don't need to be reminded that time is limited. They see it every morning upon waking, and they use that truth as a call to live deliberately, without delay. We cannot wait until life is halfway over to begin thinking about legacy, because every conversation we have, every conflict we face, every time we choose between the easy and the right, these are the moments that etch our image into the minds of others. And that image, accumulated over time, becomes what they remember us by. Not because we were perfect, but because we were consistent. So shaping a legacy means living with awareness, living as if every action carries meaning, living as if someone is learning from the way we choose, from how we treat others, from how we keep our word when no one's watching. And the truth is, someone is always learning from us, a friend, a child, a coworker, or even our future self. Legacy doesn't have to be grand. It can be quiet kindness, timely advice, the habit of keeping promises, the courage to stand for what's right, even when no one else does. Some will leave behind great works. Others will leave behind steadfast values passed through generations. But whatever form it takes, every true legacy begins within and reveals itself through action. We can begin shaping our legacy by asking, if tomorrow were my last day, would I be content with what I've left behind? That question isn't meant to scare, but to awaken. It reminds us that every delay, delaying kindness, delaying love, delaying what truly matters, diminishes the value of the life we are living. Picture a teacher who isn't famous, doesn't appear on television, doesn't have a viral speech, but over 30 years they've taught with fairness, inspired with integrity, and planted belief into the hearts of their students. That teacher may not leave behind material wealth, but they leave a mark that doesn't fade. That is a real legacy, not flashy but immortal. The Stoic lives as though each action is an entry in the journal of their soul. They don't fear judgment, because they judge themselves first. They don't wait for recognition, because they already know what is right. And most importantly, they don't wait to begin living meaningfully. They start today with the smallest deed. We can do the same. We can choose to live as though we already know what legacy we wish to leave. It could be strength in adversity, the ability to forgive when hurt, patience with others and with ourselves. It could be raising a child to be kind, leading a small team with integrity, building a life others look at and see hope, discipline, and depth. Above all, shaping a legacy is how we become the person we truly want to be. Not just when someone's watching, but in our most private moments. It's in how we treat the person serving our meal, the security guard, the stranger on the street. These are the moments legacy takes root, not on a stage, but when no one's watching. Because those moments are real, outlasts any performance. Living as though we already know our legacy doesn't strip life of spontaneity. On the contrary, it gives everything depth. Each day becomes a chance to live rightly, not for recognition, but for peace. Each decision becomes a carving into the stone of our life, and over time, those carvings create something greater than ourselves. And if one day we are no longer here, what remains won't be what we owned, but what we sowed. Seeds of understanding, seeds of quiet strength, seeds of right living. And those seeds, if planted today, will live on in the hearts of others. All the principles we've just explored, from intentional silence, timely presence, purposeful action, to the cultivation of inner strength, mean nothing if we don't bring them into our daily lives. Because Stoicism is not something to nod along with as we read. It is a philosophy of action, of practice, of every small, quiet choice we make. For me personally, one simple question has changed a lot. Is this worth losing my peace over? Every time I'm about to react negatively, every time anger rises, every time I want to speak just to prove I'm right, I pause and ask that question. And most of the time, the answer is no. That's how I learned to take a step back and stay grounded. We don't need to wait for big moments to apply Stoicism. Each morning, as we open our eyes, we can begin the day with a few minutes of silent meditation. When washing dishes or folding clothes, we can train mindfulness. When speaking with loved ones, instead of scrolling our phones, we can choose to be fully present. These small acts, compounded, forge an inner strength as stone. We cannot change the world overnight, but we can change ourselves, starting today. And that is real influence. No noise needed, no need to prove anything. Just live rightly, day by day. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next episodes. Because I truly believe we're building a community of people who live with depth, clarity, and courage. And remember, when you remain silent at the right time, show up in the right way, and act for the right reason, you not only live better, you inspire others without saying a word. See you in the next video.